Just a quick note before we get started. This conversation with Dr. Kerriann Peart was so rich that I divided it into two parts. And this is part one, where we talk about professional well-being, emotional awareness, and the ways our cultural background shapes how we show up in the workplace. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Carry On Friends, the Caribbean American Experience. And I am excited because, again, I have someone who I share a name with on the podcast today. Dr. Kerry, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm well. Nice to see you and nice to meet you.
Nice to see you and meet you as well. And so why don't you tell the community of friends a little bit about who you are, Caribbean country you represent, even though I feel like they might know because we have that distinction of is beer Kerry and Kerry-Ann's in this particular country, and about the work you do.
Absolutely. Yes. So I come from Yard, straight from Yard, otherwise known as Jamaica, Jam Down, The Rock, all those things. And the work that I do, Lord, it's expanded quite a bit and also reached quite a depth that's interesting. So I do work in the space of professional well-being, really and truly. That's what it whittles down to be, being a professional in your whole professional identity and also being well as you do that. And under the umbrella of organizations and system psychology, which is the academic side of things, is what I focus on. So bringing the efforts of cultural intelligence and emotional intelligence into the sphere of professional well-being and looking critically at how our cultural identities show up at work and how we can still be authentic and well in those particular forms of identity.
Dr. Kerry, you're saying all the things that, I don't know if you know the backstory. I'm going to tell you in a little bit. We are Jamaican. We love to tell story.
Yes.
What you're saying resonates so well in something that I recently developed, Caribbean Diaspora Experience Model and Lens 5, Culture Impacts How We Show Up at Work. Yes. And I came to this because of the reason why I started the blog and eventually the podcast was because I was experiencing some things at work. Yeah. So I guess let me be the patient, the 2012 version, right? So I was at work, and up until that point, as we say in Jamaica, me a skillachi. I do my job, my good pon it, and do the people them work and get promoted, getting poached from one firm to the other, and right. And I found myself at a place where I started to say, I've worked over, at that time, almost 15 years in this industry. What's next for me? Because I didn't want to become a lawyer, right? I've lived a lifestyle enough where, I worked hard. I didn't do it as a bragging right, but I worked in litigation, and I've told people there were days that people left work and came back to work and I still had on the outfit I had the day before because, unlike other jobs, it's legal. So there's a deadline, but the courts dictate and all of that.
Yes.
And I needed mentorship and guidance. But I felt so misunderstood. I don't want to say it's the first time, but I felt very misunderstood. And I felt like no one understood what exactly I needed. Some people might wanted to approach it. I'm like, it's not that. And then what really bubbled me, I had an office and I would sit at my desk and people would pass by my office, but I'm Jamaican. We focus. In the computer to do the work. And, I'm locked in. And people would walk by my office without me realizing they walk by my office trying to peep in and get my attention. And so I'm going to use old people talk. How them come so? If you want to say hi, just say hi now.
Right.
You expect me to read your mind that you're passing by my office back and forth, that you want to get my attention?
Yeah.
And because of that, I became mean. I was like, I'm not mean. I don't see you. Say hello. And, this idea of being overly social. And I personally felt like it was at the time where the generations at work were changing. I'm a Gen Xer. And I came up in I spent most of my time in the industry where the generation was older. So they didn't really care to go out and do the whole social
Right.
thing and hang out. So there was a newer generation and they wanted certain social, they ranked social value much higher than just get this work done and do a
Yes.
good job.
Yes.
And then I'm go say it, this same young people incite insubordination, and you know, say as
Yeah.
a Jamaican, like what? A
Yeah.
disrespect, you try disrespect me.
Yeah. Yes.
So all of these things were happening, and I couldn't understand why the other people couldn't understand, like, this is wrong. You
Right.
are encouraging my staff to be insubordinate, not because what I'm saying is wrong, but because you don't think I'm social enough or nice. And I'm like,
Yes.
what does that have to do with me executing on this job? So,
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
Dr. Kerry, Miss, all right, me a Jamaican, me self-regulate, I'm the oldest, so me just say, all right,
Yeah.
go do what we do. I went through their process.
Right.
And they determined that, oh, they don't need my services anymore. But joke was on them. Within a year or two of me leaving, one of the persons who would have been under me, they elevate them into my role. Of course, listen, me not have to tell you what happened. Then
Yep.
can't do what me did have to do.
Yep.
Then
Yep.
couldn't do it. And then they started hiring for my role again. And
Wow.
recruiters are reaching out. And I was like, I'm not interested. And I wouldn't encourage anybody to do that job because you will not be supported. And these rogue people are going to want someone who's nice. And I'm
Yeah.
like, my job is to make sure that we are in compliance with what the court says. I don't
Right.
care if you think I'm nice. Of course, I was young and foolish. And I've learned that my FIFA rules don't work with NFL rules because
Yeah.
America is NFL. I'm come
Yes.
from Jamaica and football,
Yeah.
but it's soccer over here. So I had to
Mhm.
adjust. And
Right.
so I took that in between finding a new job to adjust, watch some video. I said, all right, say less. I'm ready for the next job. But I gave you a very condensed version because
Yeah.
at the time I didn't realize how much it was culture that
Yeah.
was causing me to feel like, I'm not get it. And this
Yeah.
idea of finding a mentor, and I'm like, I'm gonna ask them in my Jamaican way, but they're like no, and I'm like, they didn't say no, but I pick up
Right.
and it was just very difficult. And
Yeah.
I started carry on friends, mostly talking about work because I was dealing with this. I'm like, I can't me
Right.
alone. I deal with this,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
like. And then I found out on the platform formerly known as Twitter that people used to complain about corporate playdates and how they disliked it with a
Yeah.
passion.
Yes.
And so that's some of the backstory. And I think the other story or experience I had was I hired part-time employees from the local college that's in New York City. And I remember interviewing one young man, interview questions, what's
Right.
your weakness? And the young man saying accent. Now, I kept my interview composure. I told him thank you and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And at the end, I said, look here. Don't
Yeah.
say your accent is a weakness again. You hear? But I could also understand why he said
Right.
that. And
Yeah.
so I told you all of that to come to the point where this idea of professional well-being, I
Mm.
am glad it's here. It took donkey years for reach here, but me glad so we reach either way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Um,
particularly for people of Caribbean heritage, because I think
yeah.
what gets lost in social is that there's a better than, and I'm not saying that there are pockets
Mhm.
of the community that might, you know, perpetrate the better than, but I
Right.
think that at the heart or the crux of it is something very cultural
Mhm.
that we all experience,
Yeah.
and it's not
Yeah.
something that we can easily turn off even when we're aware of it. Like I'm aware of certain things, and
Right.
sometimes it's almost like it's a default mode where it's
Right.
nature and nurture
Nurture.
that's
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
at the same time. So my chat
Yeah.
whole heap, Dr. Kerry.
Yeah.
Yes, go on your
No, but
thing.
that's good context. So context is important to me, right? I work based on the context of things. And you know, one thing that you mentioned about professional well-being taking donkey's years to be here, it's funny that you say it in that way based on the context you're coming from. Professional well-being isn't new. It's never been equitable. Let's put it that way, right? It's been around because we talk about having discounts to gym membership. We talk about the EAP plans where you can get a nutritionist and you can do these, team walking events and all this kind of stuff. So well-being at work isn't new. What I'm talking about and what you're talking about is the well-being as a professional based on our nuances rooted in our cultural identity, right? What is good for me as a Caribbean woman, Jamaican woman is very different than what is good for a fellow Caribbean woman who is Trinidadian, right? There are these nuances that are very subtle, but are very valuable to us. And they really impact how we do what we do at work and elsewhere. So it's interesting to hear you say it that way, because it does feel like it's been long in coming, even though the corporate spaces and the general workspaces would be like, but we've always had well-being at work. Nah, not really.
No, and it's really from this very specific Caribbean lens, because to your point, corporate in America isn't corporate in the UK. It's not corporate in Canada. It's very different.
Yeah, corporate everywhere is different. It's like a fraternity. When you get hazed going into fraternities or sororities, there is a corporate fraternity. And even though they're all like, a fraternity that comes to my mind right now is like the Alpha fraternity. I was friends with a lot of Alphas in college. And I can tell you that the Alphas at Emory University, where I went to school, are different than the Alphas that went to Georgia State or went to UGA, right? Because of just nuances in their context. So similarly, as you're saying, the corporate fraternity is nuanced. UK to Canada to the US to Latin America, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what is important, dare I say, what is important is for corporate entities to come to a point of recognition for the people that make them operate. Without people, corporations don't exist, right? So at a fundamental level, just putting it flippantly, yes, people are corporations. And with that in mind, if people are not well, then our companies are not well, and they don't execute at the level of rigor or quality and sustainability that we want. So that's the macro of it, right? So I just want to make sure that I touch on the macro, because the majority of us are very much operating day to day on just paying attention to how we contribute to the macro. And this is where the work I do comes in. If you consistently pay attention to the work that you contribute to the macro, then who's paying attention to your micros? To you as, Kerry-Ann from Jamaica, who went to such and such a school, who had this kind of family structure, who had this kind of ethical standing and morals and values and that kind of stuff. That's then contributing to her day-to-day process at work and the team she leads and the people she engages. Who's paying attention to that if not you? And that's what's happening to a lot of us in the workspace, is that we migrate to these communities. And I'll talk about what's going on in the region, because I still work in the region too. So let me just talk about what's going on across our diaspora. So we migrate into these UK, Canada, USA corporate spaces and elsewhere. And we adopt, right, what we're told to adopt. We're told that in order to get by in these spaces, you have to wear this, talk like this, act like this, etc., and somewhat water down or mute your cultural nuances, right? So you can't chat your blatant patois work. That can't happen. Even if it's you and a bunch of friends in there are Jamaican, that is reserved to lunchtime, happy hour kind of thing when you're in a corner. You can't do it in the office, right? You can't do that. You can't wear your bright colors. Like, forget that. X that out, right? Because then you're attracting too much attention to yourself as a Caribbean person at work. Be very careful how you wear your hair, right? The knotting not work. Some of the braids them can't work. All this kind of thing. Too much curly hair now work. Like all these things start coming into play. So we start adopting stuff that really isn't good for us, right? The straightening of the hair, wearing of kind of these dull looking clothes that we don't feel good in. And you know how we are as Caribbean people. If we don't feel good, we're not the good, right? We like to breeze out and free up with self and that kind of thing. And if it can't work at work, then we're not feeling our best, right? If we can't hold a vibe at work, we're just not feeling our best. So there are lots of layers to it, absolutely. But there is a way to be a professional and authentic as a Caribbean person that works. It actually can happen, right? Without you having to come across, as you were saying earlier, mean and overstepping corporate boundaries and things of that nature. And I had to learn that in a very roundabout way after I too got fed up in the spaces I had to navigate. So yeah, you touched on quite a bit. We're not in the same arena, but I feel like we've had the same experience.
Yeah, one is mostly the same experience. But I also want to add for context. The things that you said make sense. It depends. Again, we add more nuance to this. It depends on your industry. Because if you're in New
Yeah.
York City, chances are a one bag of West Indians work at the hospital and they can get you with pretty much because they have a coalition. It's a
Right.
large number of them. So hospital just have to adjust to them. I mean, again, it based on, is the hospital in Manhattan or is it in Brooklyn?
Right.
You know? So again, this, all the things that you're saying, we also, and I think for the rest of the conversation, I want the audience to think of, it matters industry, it matters geographic location, the different nuances. What is tolerated in Brooklyn may not be tolerated in another city and another state.
Correct.
And those are the things that we have to be aware of.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Kerry, there's so many. Let me tell you, say, I have a very long list of things here. You know, I'm saying I come prepared for talk to you because I'm tell you, say, like I've been waiting to have this conversation in a way, like I don't even know which way to go. All right, so so let's start with something that you answer. You said the question that we would be answering hypothetically is, what are Caribbean women and many women of color forgetting as they navigate their professional identity? So let's start there. Forgetting implies that me did know. So, but what?
I was about to ask you if this means forgetting from a basis of I knew it and I
like
tried, or forgetting as if like, oh, this is a general piece of knowledge that I
like
have known.
Me did I pay attention in a class?
Right. Come late
So,
the day, sit down in the
yes,
class.
yes. I did school the day. But anyway.
Oh gosh.
So, but what do you mean by this?
Yeah. So forgetting. So my forgetting, and I'll speak from my perspective of what I forgot. I forgot that I was a whole individual. Right? Stepping into my professional identity in the US. My contexts were the US, Washington, D.C., and then Florida. Well, Atlanta first for college. So there was some professional experience there. But then the bulk of my professional career in the US was in Washington, D.C., and then tail end of it in Florida. So very interesting. All three cities and states are very, very different. So ultimately, I forgot I was whole. And I say that because the adopting of certain behaviors or ways of thinking happened very easily because I was told, hey, in order to maneuver in these spaces, you're supposed to do this, this, and this. And I didn't question, right, what I was being told. Hence, this is why I'm saying I forgot I already was a whole person. So taking on these things, thinking that, all right, if I do this, then I will certainly, just fit in. And I hate that phrase, fitting in. And I use the word hate intentionally because that's how seriously I dislike the phrase fitting in. So I did that. I did the taking on the rule book, the so-called professional rule book of the corporate spaces I navigated in DC, Atlanta, and Florida. I put aside the kind of morals and standards, because you know we have some very high standards in the Caribbean for you know, self-esteem and self-confidence and them things.
Me
And I
tell you.
remember, I tell a girl. So I put those things aside. Unfortunately, I think if I had maintained them from jump, I wouldn't have gone through the 3 cycles of burnout that I had gone through so far in my career.
But
So
also, I don't think even if you did maintain it, me think little microaggression and little
oh
comment
God, don't wanna talk
chip,
about that.
chip,
Don't talk about
chip,
that. Don't
chip
talk about
way.
that. It's not micro. They're not micro. They're just
All
flat
right.
out aggressions. They're
Okay.
flat out
Yeah.
aggressions.
I was being nice, but
Yo,
you
well,
know,
stay a bit nice. No,
I was being nice because me they
flat out
try
aggressions.
no make
No,
it bubble up, you know?
what's frustrating about the so-called microaggressions, right, is that the people who do them are totally oblivious to the fact that this is what this thing is. It's an aggression. You are being out of order, as we would say, right? And they actually don't know any better because of the conditioning that they have gone through. And they're brought up, see, let's put it that way. We come into these spaces, and like I say, you put on what you put on. You like I say, all right, cool. Let me take up these people rule book and play their game. And then when you realize that by the time you turn around a year, 2 years into the job, you're done the rule book and you're beating the people them at their own game. And that's when you start getting the Lord, you're meanie. Lord, you're so aggressive-y. Look here, your playbook wasn't sufficient, right? So now I'm pulling back on what I know how to do, which is to focus, get this shit done, right? And at a high quality, because I come from quality. You understand? So that is what happens. You play the game, you end up beating them at their own game, and then they gaslight you because them can't figure out how that happened, and in less than, you know, a year or 2 years type of thing. So don't forget who you are. This is so going back to that, right? Don't forget who you are. Hold on to it, because your standards, your qualities, your integrity will always win out, even when they want to label you the aggressive one. Lord, she's so ambitious. Lord, she tenacious. See, oh, she speaks so well. All the aggressions, they're not micro, they're aggressions. So that's my major one, right? When we talk about what do we forget as women of color, as Caribbean women in the spaces we navigate, we forget that we stand on integrity and that we are built with quality.
But also, the reality is the emotional side of that. It's a lonely place to be this person who does this, and everyone almost shuns you or just do pleasantries. If some people do that at work, you know, we say good morning and some people just walk in, walk past, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very lonely place
It is.
because that's not sustainable, right? And so, you know, you find yourself trying to fit in because as social beings, you know that, okay, I need to interact with some colleagues. So, you know, while we know this intellectually, it's like a dissonance, right? You know this intellectually, like, yo, I'm come here for work, I'm gonna do work because, you know, I work to get done properly. But in doing it and the level of excellence that you do for yourself, and we're gonna get to this level of excellence because there's an exception. You can find yourself not having colleagues at work. And the other side of that is you don't have support or people to what you call it, advocate for you.
To be abacative. Yeah. So listen, when I say stand on your integrity and root into your authenticity, right? Like I have a whole coaching container that I call Island Rooted, where I go into this whole thing of going back to your roots, particularly for us as Caribbean women. And I also certainly serve women of color as well, because we're talking about an African experience at the core, like the roots from which we come from, right? And those things, again, integrity, dignity, authenticity, quality, that's us. I'm not saying turn up the thing so till you don't have nobody at work for lean back on, right? No, because in integrity, in dignity, we also know how to communicate and build rapport. We come from community. We are a communal people, right? We also, as we know, you know very well, Kerry-Ann, in Jamaica, when things not take way spirit, we left it out. You understand? So when
Uh,
people,
Wheel and come again. Because I don't, that's the other thing people don't understand, right?
yes,
When the
yes,
spirit don't take you,
will take
everybody
you
does things differently. Some people speak.
right.
You cannot explain to anybody what is this.
Ah,
You can't
so
explain it. It's just a feeling. And they're
it's
like,
a
well, what do you mean
feeling.
what's a feeling? Did they say something? I mean, I said, the spirit
No,
tell me, say,
spirit tell me,
the
yeah,
spirit.
left out, right? And these are things we need to pay attention to because, again, like I do with my coaching clients, this overextension thing that we do because we want to be nice, we want to fit in. When you know your spirit is telling you these people are not going to even understand or value or appreciate your attempts at being nice or communal or whatever the case may be. So yes, so in some cases you have to walk real wide. And in other cases, you exercise discernment and you know, say, all right, this person, I can rock with them to a point and still just get the work done. Now, stick a pin here, so because I know some people are going to be like, but no, but there are friends at work, there are people at work that I'm friends with, my work wife and my work. I want to left that out here. I want to leave that out, please. There is a serious kind of change in the workspace that I have witnessed and I have had to certainly come to terms with in certain spaces where being friends with certain people at work, depending on your work environment and what it is you're doing at work, can become detrimental to you, right? People divulge this whole thing about being friends at work. You're gonna work and you're gonna share one whole bag of things with this person, and I have seen it go left. The person then uses your information against you, throws you under the bus, and then you vex, and then a whole other side of you come out at work. So you can be cordial, absolutely, right? Some cases you have to walk wide, absolutely. And in other cases, I say, please be careful the friendship levels and how you are disclosing certain things at work. I certainly have great friendships I've developed with people from work. But there's an understanding that when we're at work, it's a one level thing. Like we're cool like this, but we're not gonna so certain things at work, right? Because it's just not the space. And I know that for some of us, we want to fit in quicker. And so we just say, all right, let me make friends at work and talk about this and talk about that. It sometimes does not work. In many cases, it does not work in your favor. So I just want to touch on that as well. Yeah.
All right, boy, may I tell you, me just pray some me get through something. So, all right, I've recently, again, I am very introspective, retrospect, all of these things
Yeah,
because
yeah.
me a bright girl. So me go
Yeah,
do
man.
all the things,
How
right?
you mean?
That
How you
me
mean?
need for
That's
do
right.
for make sure I say, you understand which is right. It's the level of excellence that we grew
Yeah,
up in, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
so I recently came across this idea of bore out, frightened me. I'm like, oh, what is? And
Oh,
so it describe it says it's the opposite of burnout, and it's a state
mm,
of feeling like you're understimulated, underuse, and
yes.
I don't want to say lack of meaningful
Yeah,
work, right?
yeah.
But it says common signs are restlessness at work,
Yeah.
feeling not intellectually challenged, you're
Mm,
irritable,
mm,
quiet frustration, all of these things, right?
yeah. Yes.
And typically people who bore out, they're not lazy, then they're high funk, them a hard worker, them just feel say, yo, this a work are easy, sap saps.
Easy
Yeah,
something.
so me I
Yeah.
say, this or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we understand that they, for a lot of us, based on where we are in life, the economy, you might find yourself in a role where you are the role is smaller, not in
Yes.
demeaning, but the container of the role is small and it cannot fit you.
Yeah.
And so, me da wonder, as a Caribbean woman, yeah, if we really have bore out, or if we just have tired body and just know for work hard, and when work
Ooh,
slow down, we just
gosh.
say we're boring or
Oh
it
gosh.
bored. Like, me da try understand, because these
Oh,
are the things I'm interrogating about myself, right?
yeah.
Like, you're so much of excellence, and like we're executing on the highest level, that when
Yeah.
we're not executing at that level, bore out sets in, right? And this is where this conversation about cultural nuance comes in, right? Is it really bore out,
Yeah.
or we always, our neutral is work hard.
Right.
Anything below that is like something is wrong. This
Oh
job
God.
is not the job that should be jobbing. So
Yeah, yeah,
let's
yeah.
let's talk about that a little
Yeah,
bit.
man. Yeah, man. So I will I'll pull this straight from the coaching work I do. There are three topics: burnout, bore out, and perimenopause. Okay? And we have, badge of honor to be burnt out. It's like, oh my God, I've worked to the point of burnout. And that means I have done such wonderful work. I'm so good at what I do. I'm always going, going, going. Burnout. Yay, badge. I don't know where we get the badge from, but enough of it going on. Like, so we have some badge walking around with, right? The bore out is absolutely coming up in conversations more often now than not, because yes, we are finding out that we're outgrowing our roles in a lot less time than we had anticipated. Why is that happening? Well, if we look statistically at the educational levels of Caribbean people and people of color in these spaces, we are the ones with the multiple degrees. We have enough certificates. Enough, right? So when we get into these workspaces, it's kind of like, all right, cool. By year two, you're wondering what's next. When they told you that, the next person beside you said, oh, well, it took me 5 years to get to, you look on them like, 5 years doing what? What 5 years I take you? No, 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 no. Right? So yes, we're outgrowing many of our positions, but we stay in them because we feel say we're not really ready yet for the promotion, or we really don't want to take up the time now if we go find one new job, right? And all of that, and the money good, said we, type of thing. All the excuses. And so we can stay there and continue just feeling kind of like, Lord, like I said, stops work. We can do it in my sleep, but I am bored, right? The underlying marker now that many of us, particularly as I'm working more and more with my Caribbean women, we are not recognizing our perimenopause signs and symptoms. And I find it absolutely fascinating. And I must have said to myself, I must be because of the mother I did have. My mother tell me everything. So, certain things happen and I'm like, oh, this is what mommy was talking about. Oh, this must be it. Oh, this is what's happening now. Okay, got it. Right. And really quickly, when it comes to perimenopause, it happens during the years at which we as women are in our prime professional experiences, right? Average age of like 34, 35, all the way up to 55. So we're looking at a 20-year bracket of where perimenopause, I haven't said menopause, I said perimenopause, meaning the events prior
The
to you
precursor to the pause, the
becoming
full
the pause,
pause.
full pause. Thank you. So it's a 20-year window, right? At least a 20-year window. Some women start perimenopause as soon as they turn 30. and may end up in menopause officially by 60. So that's a 30-year window. So it varies woman to woman. But here is what is frustrating. The signs and symptoms of perimenopause are very similar to that of boreout and burnout. So you will kind of be there dabbling like, all right, am I burnt out because I'm tired and kind of feeling the depression? That's kind of signs and symptoms too of some women who go through perimenopause. So it's burnout or perimenopause or midday, right? Oh, but hold on, I'm in this job for how long now and I feel kind of bored. So wait, where am I, right? And figuring out where you are is relatively easy. Working with your physician, tracking some of the signs and symptoms over about a 3-month period. I ultimately recommend a 3-month window for us to kind of document how we're feeling, what we're going through, and certain shifts in our thinking, and shifts in our physical processes as well. So you said the bore out, yes, it's real. It is that, you kind of reach a ceiling in your role. You don't know really where else to go because stops work, but it's like I keep on doing it. The burnout is where you have pushed beyond, right, a capacity point, and you keep going, right, because you tell yourself, if me not do it, who else I gonna do it? Well, if you drop down today, somebody else is getting your job. So, you need to reconcile that. And then the perimenopause, working with like getting your blood work done and monitoring the signs and symptoms of things that you're experiencing. And then you can isolate from there. So that's how I recommend.
We're going to pause here, but don't worry, the conversation continues. In the meantime, while you wait for part 2 to drop, I'd recommend that you also listen to the solo episode where I talk about Lens 5 of the Caribbean Diaspora Experience Model, which explores how culture impacts the way we show up at work. I've placed the link in the show notes. And as always, thank you for being part of the Carry On Friends community. And until next time, walk good.